People talk about knowledge being power, but I really think understanding people, truly getting what makes them tick,
Mm.
well, that gives you a huge advantage in life. My time in the FBI really hammered that home for me. And that's exactly what we're diving into for you today.
Yeah, we've looked closely at this really fascinating conversation with a former FBI agent, someone who's an expert in body language.
Yeah.
And we've pulled out some, incredibly practical insights, stuff that can give you a real edge in understanding human interactions.
Right. Think of this, the learner, as your shortcut, your way to get a handle on nonverbal communication, how to project genuine confidence, navigate tricky negotiations,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even get better at sensing when
Right.
when something's just not quite right.
Yeah.
Our goal is really to give you this knowledge without making it feel overwhelming.
Definitely. And the source material we explored, it's really rich. It covers a lot of ground from the basics, body language 101, all the way to using these cues in really high-stakes situations, espionage even, and dealing with difficult personalities. So where should we start unpacking all this?
Let's kick off with something super fundamental, something we all do constantly,
Yeah.
making faces. Our expert pointed out how these tiny muscle movements, they speak volumes, often totally unconsciously.
Yeah.
Like, think about when you're trying to understand something new, you might notice you furrow your brow a little, right between the eyebrows.
That's a great example. And what's really insightful there is that tiny action, pushing the eyebrows together, it often signals processing, maybe some confusion, maybe even a bit of doubt.
Okay.
And then you have the opposite, like when someone hears something they don't like, you might see this. Well, it's an almost instant physical reaction. The lips might tighten, maybe lose a bit of color. These are those micro expressions, right?
Yeah.
They become really obvious when you're watching people closely, especially under pressure, like in negotiations.
Speaking of pressure, confidence. It's something everyone wants more of, isn't it? Is it just something you're born with, or can you actually, train yourself to be more confident?
That's a key question. And our expert was really clear. Confidence is definitely a skill. It can be learned, it can be honed, just like anything else. In fact, it's something the FBI actively trains its agents in.
How do they do that?
Well, one specific thing they emphasize is a gesture called steepling, where you bring your fingertips together, kind of like a church steeple.
Right, right.
It non-verbally suggests thoughtfulness, self-assurance. But maybe even more basic is learning how to say no confidently, delivering that firmly, clearly. That's a real cornerstone.
Interesting. Okay, what about those really gut-level reactions? Like if you get suddenly scared or surprised, you gasp, maybe cover your mouth without thinking. There's a reason for that, right? It's deep-seated.
Absolutely. That gasp and mouth cover, it's thought to be an evolutionary holdover. Think way back, predators around. Hiding your breath could literally save your life.
Wow.
And our brains are wired with these mental shortcuts, heuristics, we call them. The freeze response. When you just stop dead in your tracks facing danger,
Yeah.
that's another one. It's primal programming, designed to boost survival odds.
It just highlights how powerful simple observation is, doesn't it? Just paying attention to these small signals seems like it could give you a massive advantage.
Tremendous advantage, as the expert put it.
Wow.
Being able to quickly size up a situation, read the people involved.
Yeah.
It's about training yourself to see the whole picture. The face, yeah, but also the shoulders, the hands, all at once. Synthesizing it in real time.
It's not just about reading others, is it? Tuning into this stuff helps you understand yourself better, too.
That's a really important point. Becoming more aware of your own nonverbals, like do your fists clench when you start getting annoyed?
Yeah.
Shoulders tighten? Recognizing those physical tells for your own emotions, like anger building. That self-awareness is step one to managing your responses better.
So how can we use this practically, like day to day, to communicate better?
Yeah.
Our expert gave a simple tip, especially for talking to kids.
Yeah, it's amazing how small shifts in your body language can change the whole dynamic. Standing right over a child, maybe looking a bit stiff, that can feel intimidating without you meaning it to.
Okay.
But just shifting to stand at a slight angle, maybe tilting your head a bit, it signals openness, makes you seem more approachable. It can really help foster that connection, get them talking.
So that little adjustment gets you more face time, basically. Makes them feel safer to engage.
Exactly. Less confrontational, more relaxed. It sends that nonverbal, I'm listening, it's safe message. That's huge for building trust, extending those moments of real connection.
It was also fascinating how even something abstract like time can be used nonverbally.
Oh, yeah. In negotiations, for example, if you deliberately control the pace, take your time responding, speak at a measured rate, it can subtly signal that you're in control. It's a
Hmm.
power dynamic thing, often totally unconscious, but very effective.
And if you're trying to figure out what someone's really feeling, focusing on fear seems key.
It often is. People might say they're concerned or have doubts, but underneath, the brain is really good at spotting fear. Recognizing that can give you insight into their real motivations, their hesitations, even if their words are different.
Let's dig into some specifics. That eyebrow knitting, glabella furrowing was the term, that little spot between the eyes. What's that telling us?
What's really amazing is how universal it is. You see it even in newborns. Pushing those muscles together often means discomfort, confusion, maybe just they don't like something. It's a very basic, nonverbal signal.
Okay. And what about touching the eyelids? I see people do that when they hear bad news or something surprising.
Yeah, the theory there is that touching the eyes, or the face generally, is a self-soothing thing. It might connect to stimulating certain cranial nerves, the fifth and seventh, and that gentle pressure helps calm you down, relieve stress.
Oh.
There was that story about the child blind from birth covering their eyes when they heard bad news. That really suggests it's innate, hardwired, not just learned.
Incredible. Our bodies just react.
Yeah.
And lips, too, you call them emotional seismograph.
That's the expert's term, yeah. When we're relaxed, lips are usually fuller, more colorful, but stress, negative emotions, blood flow changes, they can look thinner, tighter.
Right.
You also see lip biting, lip compression, little ways people try to self-soothe when uncomfortable.
And even the jaw shifting slightly. That's a sign, too.
Yes, that slight grind or shift can be a physical leak of internal disagreement, maybe annoyance, or just general discomfort with what's being said or done. Another physical tell.
Yeah, the supranal notch, that
Ugh.
little dip at the base of the neck. You said that's a vulnerable spot.
It is, physiologically. Lots of important stuff passes through there. So instinctively, when we feel nervous, insecure, threatened, we tend to protect it. You'll see people touch it, maybe cover it slightly with their hand. And interestingly, in a negotiation, touching the neck can be read by the other side as anxiety, weakness, or uncertainty. Even covering the head when distressed comes from that same protective instinct.
It's amazing how much we're broadcasting all the time, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I know some people question how reliable body language really is. Like, can you definitively say what someone's thinking?
That's a fair challenge. It's not like reading a book, and context is everything. You can't just isolate one gesture, but its role as our primary pre-verbal communication system, that's undeniable. Think about a mother and baby communicating non-verbally long before words.
True.
And research on thin slice assessments, like Dr. Embodi's work, shows we make pretty accurate judgments, like 75% accuracy in milliseconds. The studies on judging teachers from short clips, same idea. We form powerful first impressions based heavily on nonverbals.
That leads nicely into synchrony, doesn't it? That mirroring behavior we do when we connect with someone.
Exactly. Synchrony is basically nonverbal harmony. When we unconsciously mirror posture, gestures, maybe leaning in together, it builds this psychological bridge, makes communication smoother. Probably doing it a bit right now.
Maybe. So how can we use that intentionally? To build rapport, be more persuasive.
Well, subtly mirroring someone's nonverbals can be really effective. In negotiations, it can make them more receptive, even help calm things down if they're agitated.
So not like blatant copying.
No, definitely not. That's just awkward. It's subtle alignment, posture, maybe hand gestures, even using similar language. If they say family, maybe you echo that instead of saying wife and kids. It builds that subconscious rapport.
It's interesting you bring up emotions in negotiation. The old advice was always keep emotion out of it.
Yeah, and that's, it's kind of misguided, isn't it? Emotions are part of being human, part of how we make decisions. Ignoring them is ignoring reality. Think about it. Someone has a terrible time parking, then a rude receptionist. That negative feeling doesn't just vanish when they sit down to negotiate with you.
Right, it carries over.
Exactly. So sometimes acknowledging it, ooh, rough morning getting here, can help clear the air, deconflict the situation, as the expert says. Storytelling helps us process emotions, too. You know that feeling when you think of the perfect comeback hours later?
Oh, but definitely.
That's your emotional brain hijacking things in the moment.
Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks. Negotiation skills. What are some core principles for being more effective?
Fundamentally, negotiation is just effective communication with a purpose. And often the first goal isn't even agreement, it's just getting that face time, creating the space for information to flow, for trust to start building.
And preparation beforehand. What should you focus on?
Oh, prep is huge. A big part is trying to anticipate the other side's style. Are they likely to be aggressive? Cooperative? If you expect aggression, mirroring it is usually the wrong move.
So what do you do instead?
You control the pace, slow things down deliberately, stay calm, stay measured, don't get sucked into their rhythm.
Okay, so if someone comes in really strong, aggressive, how do you slow it down?
You can physically write things down, ask clarifying questions, summarize what they've said, so let me make sure I understand. It makes the interaction more visual, less purely reactive, and it gives you thinking time.
Establishes you as an equal. Yeah.
Exactly. It asserts control over the process. And honestly, sometimes you have to assess if dealing with someone really toxic is even worth it. Setting boundaries, being prepared to walk away, that's crucial too.
And knowing your own goals beforehand seems absolutely critical.
Essential. Write them down. Seriously. Otherwise, it's too easy to get swept up in the emotion, the back and forth, and leave thinking you won, but you didn't actually get what you needed.
What if you're negotiating as part of a team? How do nonverbals play into that?
Everyone needs to know their role, obviously, but non-verbally, you support your speaker. Look at them when they're talking, show engagement, maybe use that steepling gesture when they make a key point.
Right.
And avoid the still face, just sitting there expressionless. That can come across as disinterested, even hostile. It kills trust. Remember those still face experiments? Same principle applies to adults.
So even the logistics matter, like who sits where.
Absolutely. Strategic planning goes deep. Who enters first? Seating arrangements are you across a wide table or closer together, offering coffee or water. These aren't just niceties, they shape the psychological environment.
And the height dividend. Even chair height matters.
It can, subtly. There's data linking physical height to perceived leadership. So ensuring you're at eye level, or maybe even slightly higher if appropriate and possible without being obvious, it can create a small psychological edge. Think about Ramsay adjusting his chair in those kitchen shows.
Yeah. And posture generally, how we hold ourselves.
Confident posture upright, shoulders back, calm breathing. It projects control. You don't want to look needy or desperate, shrinking down, but you also don't want to look indifferent, slouched over.
Right.
Though it's important to remember, folks on the autism spectrum might communicate non-verbally in different ways, so context and awareness are key.
What about job interviews? When you're hiring, what should you be looking for non-verbally?
Look beyond just the skills on the resume. How do they approach problems? Are they observant? Listen to how they tell stories about past challenges. Is it just a report, or can you sense the feeling of having worked through it?
Interesting distinction.
Yeah, and sometimes just observing how current employees act, their general demeanor around the office, that can tell you a lot about management or underlying issues.
Let's switch gears slightly to confidence training. You mentioned your own experience learning confidence.
Yeah.
What were the big lessons there?
For me, the big takeaway was that it's not innate. You build it. It often starts small, mastering one little thing, getting competent at it. Then you build out from there. Just deciding to be confident usually doesn't work if there's nothing backing it up.
So competence is the foundation.
Absolutely. If you know your stuff, if you've done the preparation, that breeds genuine confidence, whether it's a presentation, a negotiation, whatever. Prepare thoroughly.
And sometimes just watching and maybe copying confident people helps.
It can, yeah. Observe leaders or people you admire who seem confident. How do they stand? How do they talk? How do they interact? You can consciously try incorporating some of those behaviors.
You mentioned voice modulation specifically, using a deeper tone, avoiding that upward inflection.
Right. A lower pitch often sounds more authoritative. That rising tone at the end of sentences makes statements sound like questions, which undermines you. Learning to say important things, especially no, with a firm lower tone, it's surprisingly powerful. I remember teaching Harvard students that specifically.
And just how you use space, your physical presence.
Yeah, territorial confidence.
Yeah.
Taking up appropriate space, not being aggressive and spreading out everywhere, but also not shrinking yourself down. It signals comfort and self-assurance.
Even the rhythm of speech, cadence.
Yes. Think about great speakers Churchill, Martin Luther King Jr. They often use a rhythmic cadence. It captures attention, conveys emotion more effectively, adds weight and confidence.
What about hand gestures? Are they important?
Hugely important. Hands are incredibly expressive. Open gestures, palms visible sometimes, can signal openness, honesty, care. Closed fists or hiding your thumbs that can unconsciously signal fear, anxiety, or that you're holding something back.
And eye contact. Tricky one to get right.
It is. Too much feels like staring, intimidating. Too little seems shifty or disengaged. It's about finding the balance, using gaze for emphasis, connecting, but also looking away briefly when thinking. That feels natural and confident.
Circling back to rapport building, you said even the speed of your actions matters.
Yeah, acting quickly shows you care. Responding promptly to a request, helping someone efficiently, it sends a nonverbal message of value and engagement. Even babies pick up on that responsiveness.
And that little tip about standing versus sitting when greeting someone.
Right. Maybe stay standing just a beat longer when you greet them, then sit down around the same time. It avoids that feeling of one person looming over the other, keeps it more equal.
Okay, what about taking notes? Good or bad?
It's nuanced, it can look attentive, but if you're constantly looking down, writing everything, you're missing the nonverbals. You're breaking the connection.
Like the therapist typing notes example.
Exactly. It creates distance.
Mm.
Maybe better to jot down just keywords or have someone else take detailed notes if needed. Prioritize being present and observing.
Let's on handshakes. First point of contact, how to do it right.
Keep your fingers pointing down, match their pressure. Generally, no bone crushers, no limp fish,
Yeah.
web-to-web contact, cupping their hand over the top. Usually only for people you know well, but a handshake followed by a brief, light touch on their upper arm that can sometimes increase connection, sometimes. Context matters.
Okay, let's tackle something more difficult. Narcissism. It gets thrown around a lot, but it's more than just arrogance, right?
Oh, much more. Malignant narcissism. It's a pattern. Grandiosity, needing constant admiration, but critically, a real lack of empathy. They overvalue themselves and devalue others, often manipulating them. It's not just confidence.
It seems more common in certain roles like CEOs.
Well, the actual disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, might be around 2% of the population, but yeah, studies suggest a higher percentage of top leaders show significant narcissistic traits.
Dealing with someone like that must be incredibly draining. How do you manage it?
First step is recognizing the pattern, the constant devaluing, the criticism, the exclusion. Well, understand it's not about you, it's their pattern.
Right.
And know that long-term exposure is damaging emotionally, mentally, financially. So boundaries are absolutely essential, very firm boundaries. And honestly, often the best strategy is to limit contact or remove yourself entirely if you can.
You can't really win with them.
No, they typically lack introspection. They genuinely believe they're right, infallible. Trying to change them or argue logically is usually futile and exhausting.
And someone can have traits of different disorders, like narcissistic and paranoid.
Yes, absolutely. Traits can co-occur. You might see narcissistic, paranoid, even psychopathic traits together. Psychopathy being that lack of remorse, conscience, empathy.
I feel like society, maybe social media, is encouraging some narcissistic tendencies.
You could argue that, yeah. The focus on self-image validation. It might amplify certain traits, but we need to be careful distinguishing that from the clinical disorder, which is a deep character issue, that absolute belief in their own rightness, often causing real harm. It's definitely something to be aware of when evaluating people, especially leaders.
You've seen so much across your career. How did all those years in law enforcement shape your view of people?
It was a slow, profound education in human nature, definitely. Seeing people at their absolute worst, and sometimes their best, in extreme situations, it leaves a mark.
I bet.
And while you encounter difficult, sometimes dangerous people, and see belief systems that are hard to comprehend, the overwhelming majority of people I met were decent, kind folks just trying to get by. But yeah, the tough stuff, the trauma that sticks with you, your brain holds on to it. But you also see incredible resilience, amazing kindness. I remember this woman who was blind but did intricate needlework. Things like that give you hope. Graduating the FBI Academy was a proud moment, and honestly, leaving after a full career to write and teach felt pretty satisfying too.
As we wrap this up, this deep dive has been incredibly rich.
Yeah.
What's the single biggest takeaway for listeners wanting to improve their lives, their communication?
I think it really boils down to human connection, understanding how to build it, how to maintain it. Nonverbals are the language of trust, empathy, psychological safety. Creating that comfort is key.
Yeah.
And ultimately, everyone, no matter their job, is in the people business. We all interact with others.
People often say, your way of explaining this stuff is very approachable. Is that intentional?
It is, yeah. I believe this knowledge should be accessible. My goal is always to make it clear, practical, something anyone can use.
It really strikes me. In our world now, so much digital stuff, so much distance sometimes. These fundamental human interaction skills you've talked about, they seem more important than ever.
I completely agree. Technology connects us in some ways, but we can't forget the basics. These nonverbal signals, these ways of building rapport, they're ancient, they're fundamental to being human. Understanding them brings us closer to understanding ourselves and each other.
This has been fantastic, really insightful. Thank you.
My pleasure. Always enjoy the conversation.
So for you, the learner, think about this as you go about your day. What's one small adjustment you can make? That idea of 1% improvements. Maybe it's paying more attention to someone's posture, or being more conscious of your own tone, or trying that angled stance when talking to someone. Cultivating this awareness, even in small ways, consistently, it can lead to really significant positive shifts in your interactions, your relationships, your overall effectiveness. It's a journey, right? And hopefully this deep dive gave you some useful tools to continue on it.